welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're taking a look at a story that's been blowing up online. Abhinav Arora, this young boy in India who's being presented as some sort of spiritual guru.
Yeah, it's wild, right? All the commentary and discussion surrounding this kid, it really makes you stop and think, how did we get here?
Exactly. And before we get too far into this, I think we need to make one thing crystal clear.
Totally.
We are not here to make fun of a child. We're looking at the whole picture here. The adults, the media, the culture,
Right.
all the things that allow this to happen.
It really forces us to ask some tough questions about belief and exploitation and the role of online platforms. It's a fascinating case study.
Absolutely. So to get how we got here, we kind of have to rewind a bit. One of our sources, Only Desi, they found these old ads for Abhinav's father's company.
Oh, yeah.
Panda Express, an ice cream business. And seeing Abhinav in those ads, it's a trip compared to how he's portrayed now.
Yeah, it's like night and day.
Yeah.
In those ads, he's just a regular kid, normal clothes, playing with toys, calling his mom mama.
Exactly, just a normal kid. But fast forward to today, and it's a complete 180.
Right. Religious clothing, formal language, referring to his mom as Maya, which has a much more reverent vibe.
Totally. Even his language about spirituality has shifted.
Oh, yeah. That's a subtle detail, but it's significant. He went from talking about God to using really specific names like Radharani and Nan Kishore.
Almost like someone's been coaching him, right?
It makes you wonder.
Speaking of coaching, Only Desi dug up something really interesting about Abhinav's dad, Tarun Arora. Turns out he had something like 35 videos made to promote his ice cream business.
Wow, 35.
Yeah, and they were all made by this YouTube channel called Janta Junction.
Interesting.
And get this, in one of the videos you see Abhinav and his family pretending to be these everyday customers, giving rave reviews about the ice cream.
No way, really?
Yeah, and the host even goes out of his way to say, these are genuine customers.
Yes, that's so obviously staged.
Oh, totally. But it shows you the lengths this guy, Tarun Arora, was willing to go to for publicity. Makes you think, is he doing the same thing with Abhinav's spiritual image?
Definitely makes you think.
Especially when you look at the timeline, Only Desi points out that Panda Express eventually went belly up. Tarun Arora got hit with a lawsuit saying he took money for ice cream carts but never delivered, and the court actually found him guilty.
Oof, not a good look.
Not at all. And here's the thing, Abhinav starts appearing as this spiritual figure pretty much right after this business failure. It makes you wonder if Tarun Arora just shifted to a new, more profitable product, his son.
It's definitely a valid question, especially when you consider his TED Talk. He talks about failures, but conveniently forgets to mention his most successful business.
Right. Okay, so we've got this potentially manufactured image, a history of shady business practices, but what about Abhinav's actual knowledge? Several of our sources, including Silly Studio, show him really struggling when he's asked questions outside of his rehearsed lines.
That's where you start to see the cracks in the facade.
It's almost painful to watch. They ask him to recite a verse from scripture, and he starts, but messes it up. Then they ask for a devotional song, and instead of singing, he gives this long-winded explanation.
Right, not exactly what you'd expect from a spiritual guru.
And then they ask him about the Gopal Sahasranam, which is like the 1,000 names of Krishna.
Oh, wow.
And he stumbles and finally says, "It's not in my capacity to know all of Sanatan Dharma."
Sanatan Dharma. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so Sanatan Dharma basically translates to eternal religion or eternal order. It's kind of like a catch-all term for the core beliefs and principles of Hinduism.
So he's basically admitting that he doesn't know everything about Hinduism.
Exactly. It's pretty ironic, isn't it? He's being presented as this spiritual authority, but he's acknowledging he has limited knowledge.
It's a contradiction, for sure. It makes you think, who's really benefiting from all this?
And that brings us to a question a lot of people are asking. The money Silly Studio claims Abhinav charges fees to inaugurate shops and businesses, basically renting out his spiritual aura for profit.
And there's more.
Yeah.
In one video, someone straight up asks him, if your goal is to promote religion, why are you using platforms like podcasts and social media, which are all about making money? It's a tough question to answer if you're trying to claim you're all about genuine spirituality.
Yeah, you've got a point. And that's what makes this whole situation so unsettling. Is this about real faith or something else entirely?
And maybe even more importantly, what about Abhinav? What kind of long-term effects is this going to have on him?
That's a great question. Another YouTuber, Thugesh, really digs into that. He seems less concerned about proving Abhinav wrong and more worried about the boy's well-being.
Yeah, he's raising some serious concerns.
Thugesh highlights some pretty concerning details. He points out that Abhinav is now homeschooled and dealing with a ton of cyberbullying because of his online persona.
Oh, wow, that's tough.
Yeah, there's even a clip where Abhinav says, "People are trolling me so much that I can't even go to school."
Oh, man, that's heartbreaking. It's crazy to think this kid is facing that kind of scrutiny.
It really highlights the fact that there's a real person behind all of this, a child who's being affected by the actions of the adults around him. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. In part 2, we'll go deeper into the ethical considerations, the cultural context, and what this whole situation tells us about our relationship with spirituality in these online platforms. Stay tuned, because it's about to get even more intense.
Welcome back. Ready to keep going down this Abhinav Arora rabbit hole because we're just getting started.
You got that right. Last time we were talking about how all this is affecting Abhinav, and it hit me. His image is so carefully crafted.
It's very deliberate.
It's not just what he says, but how he looks in these videos, too.
Oh, yeah, you see it all the time. Lots of close-ups. That soft lighting, Abhinav, with this serious, almost otherworldly expression.
It's like they're trying to make him seem older, more guru-like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It taps into how we naturally connect how someone looks with who they are inside. You see a kid dressed in religious clothes speaking in a measured tone, and subconsciously you make assumptions about their spirituality.
It's like that halo effect thing, right? One good quality makes you think everything else is good, too.
Right on. And with Abhinav, that one good quality is amplified by how he's presented visually. It's persuasive, even if you don't realize it.
But then you see these moments where that whole image kind of cracks. Only Desi pointed out times when Abhinav seems to slip out of character, like looking off camera or giggling.
Those moments are so interesting.
They remind you he's a kid, like he's been coached, but he hasn't lost that natural kid energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes you wonder what's going through his head. Does he get what he's saying? Does he believe it himself? It's kind of unsettling.
It really is. It's tough to see the guru image and remember there's a kid being influenced by people.
And those people are definitely working hard to protect his image. We talked about the lawsuits, but there's also this control over what media Abhinav uses.
Yeah, the choice of platforms is interesting. You see him on podcasts and YouTube channels that are already on his side.
It's like an echo chamber, right?
Right.
They're controlling the story. And if anyone asks a tough question or criticizes him, it's all defensiveness and dodging.
You can see that in the News 18 interview. They bring up the accusations from Jagadguru Rampajracharya, this well-respected spiritual leader who's been pretty outspoken against Abhinav.
Oh, right.
And how does Abhinav respond?
Let me guess, he doesn't.
He deflects. Repeats the same practice lines about seeing Krishna as his brother. Classic PR move. Avoid the real points, stick to the script.
It feels more like damage control than a real discussion about spirituality.
Exactly. And it just adds to the feeling that there's more to this than we see.
Okay, so we've covered the image, the scripting, the money, how they control what media he's on, but what about the bigger picture? Thugesh made this really interesting point. This whole thing could hurt religion itself.
That's a great point. He says all these fake babas, people exploiting religion to get ahead, it could make people lose faith in real spiritual leaders.
So you're saying the Abhinav Arora thing could make people skeptical of all religious figures?
Exactly. It creates this cynicism where everyone's motives are suspicious.
Yeah.
It can really hurt, making people lose trust and stop engaging with religion.
That's kind of scary. But it also shows how important critical thinking is. We got to be able to question what we see, especially online.
Absolutely. You can't just believe everything you see online, right?
Yeah.
We have to look deeper, see what's really going on, what people's real motives are.
Exactly. It goes beyond just not believing everything online. It's about understanding how spirituality is being presented, how it might be used to make money in our digital world.
You nailed it. This deep dive isn't just about Abhinav. It's about figuring out how to deal with a world where spirituality and spectacle are mixing more and more.
Whoa, deep thoughts. And we're not done yet. And the last part, we'll get into the ethical stuff, the cultural background, and what this whole thing says about how we view spirituality and online platforms. Get ready, because things are about to get even more intense. Welcome back, everyone. This is the final part of our deep dive into the Abhinav Arora phenomenon. It's been a wild ride, right?
It really has. We've covered so much, the image, the money, the ethical stuff, how it all fits into the bigger picture.
And through it all, I keep thinking about Abhinav's childhood. Can he even have a normal childhood with all this going on?
That's the question that hangs over this whole thing. Luckily, Thugesha's video gives us a glimpse of what Abhinav's going through. We see him struggling with the negativity, talking about being homeschooled and not being able to go to regular school because of online trolling.
There's that clip where he says, "People are trolling me so much that I can't even go to school. It's heartbreaking. You can tell it's weighing on him."
And then his mother adds her perspective, saying she tried to get him into normal kid stuff, but he always went back to the temple.
Makes you think, is it a real spiritual connection or is it something else? Like a way to cope with the pressure?
It's hard to say, but it does highlight the psychological impact. Kids are still figuring out who they are, and when their identity gets so tied up in a public persona, the lines can get blurry.
And Abhinav's persona is so divisive. People either think he's a prodigy or a fake. There's no in-between.
And that lack of nuance is what's so worrying. Kids are usually protected from that kind of harsh criticism, but Abhinav's right out there in the open.
And instead of protecting him, the adults are more worried about protecting the image they've built.
Exactly. The lawsuits, the controlled media, the rehearsed responses, they're trying to control the story, even if it hurts Abhinav.
It all comes back to that big ethical question. Is it okay to profit from a child's image and supposed spirituality?
It's a question we're facing more and more with kid influencers and how social media makes money. Where's the line between supporting a kid's talent and exploiting them?
Yeah, no easy answers there, but it's something we need to talk about. We have to make sure we're putting kids' well-being first.
Totally. And in this case, it's even more important because of the religious angle. Abhinav's story makes us think about faith, authority, and what happens when we believe blindly.
It's a reminder to be skeptical, to think critically, especially when someone claims to have spiritual authority.
And most importantly, remember that behind every perfect image, there's a human being with their own story and struggles.
So what happens next for Abhinav? I wish I knew. But I hope whatever he does, it lets him be a kid. To learn, grow, and figure out who he is without all the pressure and attention.
I couldn't agree more. Maybe that's the biggest lesson from this whole deep dive, that we need to focus on how kids are doing and make sure they're protected and heard.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the Abhinav Arora story. It's been eye-opening and sometimes pretty unsettling. We learned a lot about Abhinav, but we also saw some uncomfortable truths about the world around us.
For sure. But this is just the beginning. Keep asking questions, exploring different perspectives, and diving deep. See you next time.